What I want to tell you, or at least explain to you, is I want you to understand what it means by making a rule. Okay? Making a rule just simply means writing an equation. So what we're going to do for part B for all these problems is we're going to take this input-output table, and our job for part B is to write an equation that represents this function. Okay? So I'm going to give you a little hint on how to do it. I'm not actually going to do it for you. All right? But follow along, and then I'm going to ask two of you to give me the answer for B. All right? So be prepared with that. Okay? So here's how it's going to work. Anytime you're asked to write a rule, you want to look, and you're given a table, you want to look at your output. What is the variable of my output? Since it's y, that is the variable you want to write first in your equation. Okay? Because this is the dependent variable. All right? And dependent variable always comes first in our equation. After that, we want to write the equal sign. Okay? And then the next thing we want to write is on the right side of the equal sign. I'm going to give myself some room because we're going to add to this. Is you want to write your independent variable. And your independent variable is your input. So in this case, it's labeled as x. This is how you always want to start your equations or your rules. Okay? So if you want, we could do that for all of these. For 12, we could put y equals and then space x. Y equals space x. Okay, that's how you're going to start. Think of this as like your template to writing equations. All right. So how do I freaking write an equation? It's pretty simple. This is what you're going to use. You got to use addition, subtraction, multiplication, or division to write an equation. These are your options. Okay? So let's go ahead and try to figure out the rule or the equation for this. So first thing you want to do is look at your first set of input and output. And you want to ask yourself, what can I do to my first input? What can I add, subtract, multiply, or divide so that I can get my output that's connected to it, so I can get my partner? So for me, as I look at number one, what can I add? That's the first thing I'm going to look for. What can I add to number one so it can make it 5? So in my opinion, if I add 4 to number one, that simply gives me 5. Okay? So right now, I think my rule is going to be adding 4 to my x value. Remember, these are your x values. So when we go to our equation, what are we going to do to our x values? According to my rule, we are going to try to add 4. Okay? So let's see if my rule works. So let's try the first one. I'm going to take my x value, plug it in for my x value here. So let's plug in this case, my first x value is 1. 1 plus 4 gives me 5. Is that what it should give me? And the answer is yes, it does give me 5. That rule checks off the first pair of numbers. Okay? Now we're going to check, does that rule check off the next set of numbers? So now for x, I'm going to plug in 2. So let's plug in 2 here and do the math. 2 plus 4 gives me 6. But what you'll notice is I was supposed to get a 10. That means the rule I wrote, it does not work for the second set of numbers. Therefore, this entire rule is bad. This is a bad rule because it did not work for all the numbers. So this is the wrong rule. Adding 4 does not work. Okay? So what you're going to do is what I want you to do is I want you to find the rule for number 11. Okay? We already know adding 4 is not working. Okay? I'm going to give you 3 minutes and I'm going to call on 2 people to give me that rule. All right? Good luck. Go for it. You got 3 minutes. I want you to, again, do the same process here, but I want you to do it for 12, 13, and 14. Figure out the rule. Just like we figured out the rule here was multiplying by 5 to each x. Figure out the rules here. Always start with this template, y equals, and then your independent variable here. Okay? I'm going to give you about 10 minutes to do 12, 13, and 14. And then we'll come back and we'll go from there. That gives me, hold on, sorry, my screen froze a little bit. So negative 4 in for x, that gives me negative 4 plus 6. That gives me 2. So far, so good. Now I'm going to plug my next x in. Negative 2 in for x, so negative 2 plus 6. That's positive 4. And then the last one, 0 plus 6. That should give me 6, and it does. So my rule is adding 6. Okay? I'm just going to do the last one for you. I don't want to keep more of your time here because I want you to start working on the calendar stuff. So the rule here for the last one, set up the template. My dependent variable equals my independent variable. Okay, so let's look. The first one I would try with this is what can I add, subtract, multiply, or divide to get 16? So I'm going to take 8. The first thing that comes to mind is adding 8. So let's check this rule. If I plug in 8 here and I add 8, that gives me 16. That's good. If I plug 11 here and I add 8, that gives me 19, which means it doesn't work. So this rule of adding 8 is not good. That's the bad rule. So now we got to try something else. We tried addition. I'm not going to try subtraction because that doesn't make sense, but I'm going to try multiplication. So I'm going to multiply by 2. So let's see if this rule works. Let's plug in 8. 8 times 2 gives me 16. Good. Let's plug in 11. 11 times 2 gives me 22. So far, so good. Plug in the next one. 14 times 2 gives me 28. That works. And plug in the last x. 17 times 2 gives me 34. So we found my rule, and it's y equals 2 times x. All right. Hopefully this feels good to you here. Your application problem that is acting as your quiz today has a problem very similar to these. All right. So make sure you get all that calendar stuff in. So I'm going to give you the access codes for you to check in. Please check in before you leave Zoom. All right. Make sure you check. This is how I'm taking roll. And a lot of you are not checking in even though you're in my Zoom. Also, if you're new to my class, do not leave. You need to ask the question like, what the heck am I doing? Okay, where do I find information? How do I check in? Stuff like that. I'm going to be here for the rest of the period. If you have any questions about the calendar information, I want you to be working on the calendar until we get out here 11:15. That gives you 45 minutes to do any assignments for this week that you have not turned in. And I've been looking. There's a lot of you have not turned in some stuff. Actually, a lot of you haven't turned in a lot of stuff. Okay? So take these 45 minutes before your next period starts to work on the calendar from week 2 and start turning some stuff in. I want to grade that stuff. All right? So without any more interruptions, here is the code to check in today. Please check in.
Where do I go to check in at?
It's in Canvas. Okay? Well, stay on and I'll show you. Just write this code down and I'll show you how to do it.